This is our countdown of the top 10 best Xbox 360 exclusives of all time. A few things to note is that if a game was initially released as an Xbox 360 exclusive, but it was ported to another platform years later, it will still be on this list. With that being said, let's get right into this. Number 10, Halo Wars. RTS games and consoles have never really meshed well together. Halo Wars is one of the exceptions. The developers knew what they were working with when they were developing Halo Wars. They didn't try to make a full-blown PC RTS and cramp the controls somehow onto controllers. No, rather they took a popular franchise in Halo and made an RTS that was more simplified and accessible. But that's how an RTS should be done on a console, and being a Halo game, the plot was there, the music, the art direction. It's an RTS with a Halo skin, and a Halo skin definitely isn't a bad thing. Number 9, Dead Rising. The Dead Rising games these days are multi-platform. Dead Rising 3 was on Xbox One and PC, Dead Rising 2 was on 360, PS3, and PC. But many forget that the first title in the series was an Xbox 360 exclusive. Capcom struck magic with Dead Rising with an innovative design at the time and nailed the zombie outbreak setting. While looking back, there were some issues with the game like the save system and the story progression. At the time, this was one of the most pure fun games that you could get on the 360, and it's still a decent playthrough these days. Number 8, Crackdown. Initially, Crackdown gained fame and success due to the fact that Microsoft was packing in codes for the Halo 3 beta with the game. Soon, we came to realize that, hey, Crackdown is actually a pretty good game. The open world was done so well, and at the time, the visuals were at such a high level. The detailed city, the large draw distances, all in a great cel-shaded art style. But the best part about Crackdown is the gameplay. Jumping from building to building, shooting things up, the game was an absolute blast. The multiplayer of the game was a great addition too. When people look back at Crackdown, they remember it for being a great game, not for being the game that came with the Halo 3 beta, and that in itself is an achievement. Number 7, Shadow Complex. Early on in the 360's lifecycle, the future of Xbox Live Arcade games was uncertain. Are these going to be games that eventually rival full retail releases, or are these always going to be smaller games that just don't match the big games? 2009's release of Shadow Complex showed us just how good arcade titles could be. Shadow Complex is a Metroidvania style game with great gameplay and exploration, and being a downloadable title, the visuals were excellent too. And considering all of that came at a fraction of the price compared to the regular retail release, Shadow Complex easily became one of the best games on the Xbox 360. And Shadow Complex is backwards compatible as well, so if you have an Xbox One, you can play this game as well, and trust me, it's a game you want to play. Number 6, Alan Wake. Remedy was responsible for developing one of the best and most underrated Xbox 360 games in Alan Wake. Alan Wake is a psychological thriller played in a cinematic action game. The story in Alan Wake is very well told with near perfect pacing. And let's not even get started on the visuals, art direction, lighting. It's some of the best that you're gonna see on the Xbox 360. And these visuals combined with the music and ambiance create one of the best atmospheres in any game that you're ever gonna play. The one knock on Alan Wake is that for a retail game, it wasn't very long and there wasn't much reason to replay it. Regardless, nowadays it's still a game that I would highly recommend to anyone. Number 5, Forza Motorsport 3. The release of Forza 3 marked the day that Turn 10 was no longer second place in terms of creating high-quality racing games. Forza 3 is one of the best racing games of all time. The visuals, sound, gameplay, everything caters to car fanatics, and if you're someone that isn't a fan of cars, Forza 3 was still a very accessible game to anyone while also having a ton of depth. Forza 3 also has a ridiculous amount of content from the single player to the online play. There's a lot to pick from and all of it is of a very high quality. Nowadays, I would recommend someone to just go and play something like Forza 6 on the Xbox One, but at the time, Forza 3 was something else. Number 4, Lost Odyssey. It's weird to talk about exclusive JRPGs on an Xbox console because people don't realize at a time the Xbox 360 was the place to go for JRPGs. With games like Tales of Vesperia, Blue Dragon, but the best of them all was Lost Odyssey. If you were disappointed by Final Fantasy 13 and you haven't played Lost Odyssey, I don't know what you're doing. The game features a very traditional turn-based style combat system. While to many it might feel dated, it's what the majority of JRPG players like the best. The visuals and production values are some of the best on the console, but what really sets Lost Odyssey apart from the pack is the moving narrative with a fantastic cast, great character development, and an engaging plot. If you're remotely into JRPGs or a fan of the Final Fantasy games of old, Lost Odyssey is a must-play. Number 3, Gears of War 2. The Gears of War franchise is filled with quality. The first game was great, as was the third game, and we'll forget about Gears Judgment for a bit. But the best of them all was Gears of War 2. Gears of War 2 made so many strides over the first game with a deeper plot and the better multiplayer. There were a few issues with Gears 2, but the overall package was stellar. And the multiplayer was excellent to say the least, whether it was the competitive multiplayer or the co-op campaign or the Horde mode. There was a ton of great multiplayer content in Gears of War 2 and all of it made you come back for more. Number 2, Fable 2. The first Fable title became one of the most popular games on the original Xbox, and Fable 2 was a worthy follow-up. While the game wasn't a full-blown open-world RPG, the game gave you so much freedom that at times it felt like one. And that freedom is really what's synonymous with Fable. There are so many decisions to make and you really can play the game the way you want to. The story flew well and the gameplay was great, but the real joy of Fable is developing your own character the way you want to make him and exploring the world and content that's in Fable 2. And finally, number 1, Halo 3. Halo Reach was great, Halo 4 was great, but Halo 3 was on another level from those games. The campaign itself wasn't perfect, but playing through the story with 3 other friends was some of the most fun you'll have in a campaign. The multiplayer has a ridiculous amount of depth with so many different game modes, each map felt varied and well designed. And obviously, how could we forget about the Forge mode? That provided endless, hours upon hours of entertainment. Halo 3 is one of the best shooters of all time, and it's a game that really defines the Xbox 360 as a console. And at this point, I'm pretty sure most of you have played it, but if you haven't, what are you waiting for? So that wraps up our countdown of the top 10 Xbox 360 exclusives of all time. Let us know in the comment section down below if you agree with this list, disagree. Do you think a game should be ranked higher, a game should be ranked lower? Did we forget a game altogether? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.